What would you do if you came home one night and found your children, your entire reason for living, shivering outside in the storm, abandoned by the very person you trusted to protect them? That's the question I want you to hold in your heart as we begin. Because my name is Michael Johnson, and this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about how easily evil can wear the mask of love. Michael had never thought of himself as a lucky man. Growing up in Charlotte, North Carolina, he had learned early that life rarely handed out gifts for free. His father died when he was 12, and from then on he carried the weight of being the man of the house. By the time he was in his late 20s, he had built a decent career as a construction engineer, steady, hard-working, respected by his crew, but there was a part of his life that still felt empty. That emptiness changed the day he met Angela Carter. It was a community fundraiser at St. Paul's Episcopal Church on a sticky summer afternoon. Michael hadn't even wanted to go. He preferred quiet evenings, not crowded gatherings, but he went, partly because his mother insisted, partly because some part of him was tired of always being alone. And then he saw her. Angela was standing near the refreshment table, laughing with a group of children who clung to her as if they were their favorite aunt. She wore a simple white dress that seemed to glow in the late afternoon light. Her laughter, soft, melodic, cut through the noise of the crowd and settled right in his chest. Michael remembered hesitating for several minutes, afraid to approach her. He was a man used to building bridges and houses, not conversations with women who seemed far out of his league. But when their eyes met, she smiled, warm, genuine, as if she had known him forever. That was all it took. From that moment on, Michael and Angela were inseparable. She taught at a local elementary school, pouring her heart into the lives of children who often came from broken homes. Michael found himself admiring not only her beauty, but her strength, the way she spoke of hope, the way she believed in second chances for every child. They courted for nearly 2 years, walking hand in hand through Charlotte's Freedom Park, sharing late-night milkshakes at diners, and attending Sunday service together. Michael loved how Angela carried joy like a lantern in a dark world. When he finally knelt to propose beneath the oak trees outside the church where they had first met, her yes came with tears streaming down her face. Their wedding at St. Paul's was simple, but filled with love. The pews overflowed with friends, family, and Angela's lifelong companion, her best friend since high school, Vanessa Green. Vanessa was a cardiac nurse at Atrium Health. She stood by Angela's side as maid of honor. She looked proud, almost possessive, but Michael brushed the thought away. That day was about beginnings, about promises sealed under God's blessing. For the first 3 years, Michael and Angela's life together was as close to perfect as anyone could imagine. Their small house on the edge of Charlotte rang with laughter, weekend barbecues, and whispered dreams about the future. Angela wanted a big family, a noisy home where no child ever felt alone. Michael promised her that dream. When Angela announced she was pregnant, they both wept with joy. And when the doctor revealed it wasn't 1 baby, or even 2, but 3 triplet girls, their happiness knew no bounds. Michael built cribs by hand, one beside the other, each painted with love. Angela decorated the nursery in soft pastels, humming lullabies as she worked. They named their daughters Emily, Hannah, and Chloe. 3 tiny miracles born on a rainy spring night, 3 cries that filled the delivery room like the first notes of a symphony. Michael held them all at once, his heart overflowing in a way he hadn't known was possible. But woven into that joy were shadows Angela tried to hide. Pregnancy with triplets had taken its toll on her body. She grew weaker, her breath shorter, her heart struggling in ways that alarmed her doctors. Michael clung to hope, to faith, to the belief that love alone could carry them through. Through it all, Vanessa was there, bringing meals, helping with feedings, staying overnight when exhaustion hit hardest. She seemed to be the friend every family prayed for, dependable, selfless, always ready to step in. And yet, in hindsight, Michael would remember moments that felt slightly off. The way Vanessa's eyes lingered too long when she watched him cradle his daughters, the quiet tension in her smile when Angela reached for his hand. At the time, he dismissed them as tricks of his imagination. He didn't know then that those fleeting looks were cracks in a mask, hints of something darker. All he knew was that life, though difficult, felt full. He had a wife he adored, 3 daughters who lit up his world, and a friend who seemed willing to sacrifice everything to help them. What he didn't know, what he couldn't even begin to guess, was how fragile that happiness really was.
Angela's health declined faster than anyone expected. What had begun as mild fatigue after the triplets' birth soon transformed into frightening episodes, her heart racing uncontrollably, dizziness forcing her to sit down in the middle of simple tasks, breathlessness that left her clutching the door frame after climbing a single flight of stairs. Michael tried to convince himself it was just the exhaustion every new mother felt, magnified by caring for 3 babies at once. But deep down, he sensed something far more serious, and the doctors confirmed it: postpartum cardiomyopathy. A rare condition, dangerous, unpredictable. Michael's world tilted. He had thought the hardest part would be the sleepless nights, the endless feedings, the struggle of raising 3 babies at once. Now he faced something no young husband ever wants to imagine: watching the love of his life fight for every breath. Angela, ever the optimist, tried to hide her pain. She smiled through the exhaustion, whispered bedtime stories to the babies even when her voice trembled, and assured Michael again and again that she was fine. But late at night, when she thought he was asleep, he would hear her muffled sobs. Vanessa became a constant presence. She came by almost daily, carrying groceries, cooking heart-healthy meals, organizing Angela's medications with clinical precision. She was a cardiac nurse, after all. She seemed to know what she was doing. Michael felt grateful. He told himself God must have sent Vanessa to help us through this storm. But as Angela grew weaker, Michael began noticing a strange dynamic. The babies cried less when Vanessa held them than when their mother tried. Angela would look on, her eyes filled with both relief and sadness, watching her best friend step into roles she could no longer fill. Michael hated the guilt he saw on her face, that fear of being replaced, of not being enough for her children. He reassured her again and again, "You are their mother. Nothing can ever change that." Still, Angela seemed to sense something. One quiet Thursday evening, after the girls were asleep, she called Michael to sit beside her. Her skin was pale, her hands trembling as she laced her fingers through his. "Michael," she whispered, "I don't think I have much time left." He shook his head fiercely, tears already welling in his eyes. "Don't say that. You'll get stronger. We'll fight this. The doctors." She pressed her finger to his lips, silencing him. "Listen to me. Promise me something." Her eyes, though weak, were steady and sharp. "Promise me you will protect the girls, no matter what. Don't let anyone harm them. They are our legacy. They're the best parts of both of us." Michael's chest ached with a grief he wasn't ready to face. "I promise," he choked out. "I'll keep them safe, always." Angela smiled faintly, her tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "That's all I need." She passed away 3 weeks later, cradled in Michael's arms, while the baby slept in the next room. Her final breath left a silence so heavy, Michael thought the world itself had stopped turning. The funeral at St. Paul's was a sea of grief. Colleagues, neighbors, students whose lives Angela had touched, all gathered to honor the woman who had carried light into so many lives. Michael stood with his daughters in his arms, barely able to stand upright under the weight of loss. And through it all, Vanessa was there. She delivered a heartfelt speech about Angela's generosity and spirit, tears streaking her cheeks as she promised to help Michael and the children in any way she could. He believed her. He had no reason not to. After all, wasn't she Angela's closest friend? Wasn't she the one who had been there through every crisis, every hospital visit, every sleepless night? He couldn't imagine then how those promises would one day twist into something unrecognizable. At that moment, Michael only knew one thing. His world had collapsed, and if not for his 3 daughters clinging to him with their tiny hands, he might have let it collapse entirely. They became his reason to keep breathing, the anchor that kept him from drifting into despair. But grief has a way of blinding us. It makes us cling to whatever light seems available, no matter how faint, no matter how dangerous. And so, in the weeks that followed, Michael leaned heavily on Vanessa. Too heavily. He didn't yet realize it, but he was opening the door to a darkness far greater than the one death had left behind.
The weeks after Angela's passing blurred into one long stretch of exhaustion and grief. Michael tried to hold everything together, but raising triplets while working full-time was a battle he was losing. He woke up at 3 a.m. to Emily's cries, only to find Hannah already screaming and Chloe coughing in her crib. Bottles needed warming, diapers needed changing, laundry piled up like mountains. Michael barely ate. Some days he barely remembered to shave. He was a man who could design blueprints for skyscrapers, but he couldn't figure out how to survive 3 days alone with his own children. That's when Vanessa stepped in, not as a visitor, but as something closer to a permanent fixture. At first, Michael resisted. He didn't want to impose, but she was insistent. "Michael, you can't do this alone," she told him one night, scooping Emily into her arms while effortlessly rocking Hannah with her foot. "Angela would want me here. Let me help." And help she did. She cooked meals when Michael forgot to eat. She braided the girls' fine baby hair into neat little pigtails before daycare. She labeled bottles, kept the laundry moving, even taught Michael how to pack lunches that 3 picky toddlers would actually eat. Slowly, the girls grew to expect her presence. When they scraped their knees, it was Vanessa they ran to first. When nightmares came, they wanted her voice reading the bedtime story. Michael felt a pang of guilt every time, but he told himself it was natural. Children bond with whoever meets their needs most consistently, and right now, he wasn't enough. 2 years passed like this. Life settled into a rhythm, different from what Michael had dreamed of with Angela, but functional, even comforting at times. The house was alive again. There was laughter at the dinner table, cartoons on Saturday mornings, birthday cakes with too many candles. And all along, Vanessa was there, smiling at the head of the table like she belonged. Neighbors began whispering, not unkindly, that maybe Michael and Vanessa were meant to be. They already looked like a family. Michael denied it at first, still clutching the memory of his wife. But late at night, when the loneliness pressed down like a weight, he couldn't deny how natural it felt to have Vanessa there. The turning point came on the 2nd anniversary of Angela's death. The girls, now 3 years old, drew pictures at preschool. Stick figures of Daddy, Aunt Vanessa, and themselves all holding hands under a big yellow sun. They called it Our Family. That night, after putting the girls to bed, Michael sat across from Vanessa at the kitchen table. He studied her face, so familiar now, always present, always steady. He said, "I don't know what this means, but maybe it's time to stop pretending. Maybe the girls are right. Maybe we are a family." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "That's all I've ever wanted, Michael, to be here, to love them, to love you." Within months, they married quietly in a small courthouse ceremony. No big church, no packed pews, just a handful of witnesses and 3 little girls tossing flower petals with innocent joy. Michael told himself he was doing the right thing. His daughters deserved a mother figure. He deserved a partner. And if fate had taken Angela away, maybe it had left Vanessa behind for a reason. For a time, life seemed almost normal again. The girls were happy. The house felt whole. Michael breathed easier, believing he had honored Angela's last wish to protect their daughters, to keep them safe. But what he didn't see, what he couldn't yet imagine, was that very person he now called wife had been waiting for this moment all along. And soon, tiny cracks would appear in that carefully crafted image of perfection.
At first, the cracks were subtle, so small Michael almost convinced himself they didn't exist. It began with the girls. Emily, usually the loudest, grew quiet at the dinner table, pushing food around her plate instead of chattering about preschool. Hannah started waking up with dark circles under her eyes, clinging to her father's shirt when he tried to drop her off at daycare. And Chloe, the most tender-hearted, began sucking her thumb again, something she hadn't done in over a year. Kids go through phases, Vanessa told Michael with a shrug when he raised the issue. They're just adjusting. But something about their silence gnawed at him. Then came the storm. One April afternoon, a sudden thunderstorm rolled over Charlotte. Sheets of rain hammered rooftops, lightning split the sky. Michael had left work early, eager to surprise the family. As he turned onto his street, he noticed something strange. 3 small figures huddled together on the porch, drenched from head to toe. His heart lurched. He slammed the car into park and bolted out, rainwater soaking him instantly. Emily, Hannah, and Chloe sat there in their pajamas, hair plastered to their faces, teeth chattering violently. "Daddy!" they screamed in unison the moment they saw him. They stumbled down the steps, splashing through puddles, and threw themselves into his arms. Michael's mind raced. "Why are you outside? Where's Vanessa?" The girls looked at each other, hesitant. Then Emily whispered, "She told us we had to stay out here until her friend left." Michael froze. "Friend?" Hannah nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "There's a man inside. We weren't allowed to go back in." Chloe's voice was barely a whisper. "Daddy, it's happened before." Michael's chest tightened with rage and fear. His babies, his entire world, left out in a storm while his wife entertained some stranger inside their home? He ushered them into his car, wrapping them in the emergency blankets he kept in the trunk. "Stay here. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me." His voice shook with fury. "Daddy will handle this." Rainwater dripped from his hair as he strode back to the house, each step heavier with the storm inside him. The key scraped against the lock. He pushed open the door. The living room looked normal. The family photos still hung on the walls, toys still scattered across the rug. But faint laughter floated down the hallway, leading him to the bedroom. Michael's pulse roared in his ears. He opened the door. There she was, Vanessa, wrapped in the sheets of their bed, her body intertwined with a man Michael had never seen before. Their laughter died instantly when they noticed him. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the pounding rain outside. Michael stood frozen, drenched, his knuckles white at his sides. Vanessa sat up, completely unashamed. "You're home early," she said flatly, as though he were the intruder. Michael's voice was low, trembling with barely restrained fury. "How long?" The man scrambled, gathering his clothes in shame. But Vanessa only crossed her arms, her tone dismissive. "What did you expect, Michael? You're gone half the time. I have needs too." Michael's body shook, not from the rain, but from the realization crashing down on him. His daughters, abandoned in a storm. His marriage a facade. His trust shattered.
"You put them outside," he growled. "My girls, in the rain, while you did this?" Vanessa rolled her eyes. "They're fine. A little rain won't kill them." That was the moment Michael knew. This wasn't just betrayal. This was danger. Vanessa wasn't a partner. She wasn't a mother to his children. She was something else entirely. Something dark. Something he had let into his home. And the worst part? Deep down, some part of him suspected this was only the beginning.
Michael barely slept that night. He sat in the rocking chair in the girls' room, watching their small chests rise and fall, listening to the storm finally ease into silence. The betrayal, the rage, it burned inside him like fire. But what cut deeper was the fear etched on his daughters' faces when they whispered, "Daddy, it's happened before." The next morning, over bowls of cereal, Emily spoke first. Her voice was small, but steady. "Daddy, Mommy Vanessa says if we tell you things, bad stuff will happen to you." Michael's spoon clattered against the table. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Hannah bit her lip, eyes welling up. "She said if we ever told, she'd make sure we never saw you again." And then Chloe, the quietest, whispered words that made Michael's blood run cold. "She gave Mommy Angela bad things in her food." The room spun. Michael gripped the edge of the table. "What do you mean?" Chloe's gaze dropped to her cereal. "I saw her. When Mommy was sick, she put drops in the juice, and she switched the bottles in the bathroom." Michael's mind flashed back to Angela's decline. How sudden it had been, how little the medication seemed to help. He remembered how Vanessa had insisted on preparing meals, managing the pill organizers, even speaking to the doctors for them. At the time, it had seemed like kindness. Now, it felt like something else entirely. The girls didn't understand the weight of what they were saying, but Michael did, and it shook him to his core. That evening, when the girls were asleep, Michael sat alone in the dim light of the living room, staring at Angela's photograph on the mantel. Her smile, warm, steady, filled with love, seemed almost to ask him, "Are you paying attention now?" The next day, he contacted the police. Detective Maria Sanchez, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for persistence, listened carefully as Michael relayed everything: the girl's statements, Vanessa's betrayal, his own suspicions about Angela's death. "Mr. Johnson," she said, folding her hands, "children don't invent details like that. If your daughters consistently describe tampering with food and medication, we need to take it seriously. Are you saying Angela might have been—" The detective nodded grimly. "We'll need to petition for an exhumation and full toxicology report. It won't be easy, and it won't be fast. But if there's truth here, we'll find it." Weeks passed in agonizing slowness. Michael tried to keep life normal for his daughters, packing lunches, braiding hair, singing lullabies, but beneath it all was a constant hum of dread. Had the woman he trusted, the woman Angela had once called her best friend, really poisoned his wife? The results came back on a gray Tuesday morning. Detective Sanchez called him to the station. Her eyes told him everything, before her words did. "Mr. Johnson," she said softly, "your wife's tissue samples show high levels of digitalis. It's a substance sometimes used in heart medications, but in excessive amounts it causes heart failure. This wasn't natural. This was poisoning, over months." Michael felt the air leave his lungs. Angela's death hadn't been fate or a cruel twist of illness. It had been murder. And the murderer had lived in his house, cooked in his kitchen, read bedtime stories to his daughters. But that wasn't the end. Detective Sanchez leaned forward, her voice sharp. "And there's more. During our investigation, we uncovered messages between Vanessa and two men arrested months ago for loitering near your daughter's school. Those messages discuss pickup times, routines, And she paused, then finished with a steady voice. Plans to make your girls disappear. Michael's world tilted again. Disappear? You mean— Yes, the detective confirmed. She was planning to have them abducted. Permanently. The betrayal, the horror, was almost too much to grasp. Vanessa hadn't just betrayed his trust, she had tried to destroy his family from the inside out. Michael clenched his fists, his voice breaking as he whispered to Angela's photo in his mind. I promised I'd protect them. I won't fail again. The storm had only begun.
The arrest happened faster than Michael expected. One evening, just after he tucked the girls into bed with their favorite stuffed animals, a pair of police cruisers pulled quietly into the driveway. Red and blue lights flashed against the curtains as officers stepped out, their radios crackling softly. Michael stood in the hallway clutching Emily's doll in one hand, his pulse pounding in his ears. The girls peeked from their bedroom door, wide-eyed. "Daddy, what's happening?" Anna whispered. "Stay in your room, babies," Michael said gently, forcing calm into his voice. "Daddy has to talk to some people." Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps that seemed to echo through the whole house. Michael opened the door to find Detective Sanchez, her face grim but resolute. "Mr. Johnson, we're here to bring Vanessa in for questioning. We need you to stay calm, for your daughter's sake." And there she was. Vanessa stood at the end of the hallway, dressed in her usual neat attire, her hair pinned back as though nothing were out of place. But when her eyes met Michael's, he saw it. The flash of panic, the crack in her practiced composure. "Michael, what is this? Why are there police in our home?" Michael's jaw tightened. "They know, Vanessa. About Angela. About the girls. It's over." For a split second, something dark flickered across her face. Then she laughed, a chilling, bitter laugh that made Michael's stomach twist. "Do you really think anyone will believe you? You're a grieving widower. You've been unstable since Angela died. They'll see what I've done as kindness, sacrifice. I was the one holding this family together while you drowned in your own sorrow." Detective Sanchez stepped forward. "Vanessa Green, you're under arrest for the murder of Angela Johnson, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and child endangerment." 2 officers moved to cuff her, but Vanessa snapped her head toward Michael, eyes blazing. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "I know things about Angela, things you wouldn't want the world to hear." Michael's throat tightened, but he stood his ground. "The only thing the world needs to hear is how you hurt the people who trusted you most. And now everyone will know." As the officers led her away, the girls crept out from their room, clutching each other's hands. Emily's voice trembled. "Daddy, is she coming back?" Michael knelt down, pulling them into his arms. "No, sweetheart, not anymore. She can't hurt you again." But the nightmare didn't end with the arrest. The investigation widened, and each revelation cut Michael deeper. Detectives uncovered detailed journals Vanessa had hidden in her apartment, pages of obsessive writing about Angela and Michael, fantasies of replacing his wife, lists of medications and dosages. There were even entries describing the girls as obstacles, and chilling notes about finding a way to remove them without suspicion. The prosecution called it one of the most disturbing cases of calculated betrayal they had seen in Mecklenburg County. The courtroom was packed on the first day of trial, reporters whispering, cameras flashing outside the courthouse steps. Michael sat in the front row, the girls too young to attend, but present in every word he spoke to the jury. He testified about Angela's sudden decline, about Vanessa's role in their lives, about the night he found his daughters trembling on the porch. His voice cracked as he described Chloe's whispered memory. "She put drops in the juice." The toxicology reports, the text messages with hired men, the journals, all damning evidence. Piece by piece, the image of the selfless nurse shattered, revealing the monster beneath. When the verdict was read guilty on all counts, Michael felt tears sting his eyes. Not tears of joy, not even relief, but of grief renewed.
Angela had been stolen from him. His daughters had been scarred, and no sentence, no matter how severe, could ever give them back what was lost. Yet as the judge declared Vanessa's fate, life in prison without parole, Michael looked at the faces of the jurors, the reporters, the strangers who had followed every detail of his family's ordeal, and he realized something. The truth had finally spoken louder than Vanessa's lies. For the first time in years, he felt the faintest flicker of peace.
Life after the trial felt both lighter and heavier at the same time. Vanessa was gone, locked away where she could never touch them again, but the shadow of what she had done still lingered in every corner of the house. Michael took time off from his construction projects, refusing contracts, ignoring phone calls. Instead, he focused every ounce of his energy on his daughters. He woke them up with pancakes shaped like hearts, braided their hair with clumsy but loving hands, and tucked them into bed every night with the same whispered promise, "You're safe now. Daddy's here." But healing wasn't instant. Emily still flinched when thunder rolled outside, remembering that stormy night on the porch. Hannah often asked in the dark, "Daddy, what if she comes back?" And Chloe sometimes stared at her food too long before eating, her small mind still tangled in memories of watching Vanessa tamper with her mother's meals. Michael carried their pain as if it were his own. He found them a child psychologist, Dr. Rachel Porter, who specialized in trauma recovery. Dr. Porter helped the girls draw their fears with crayons, turn their nightmares into stories where they were heroes instead of victims. Slowly, Michael saw them breathe easier, laugh more freely. Yet he too had his own ghosts. At night, he often sat by Angela's photograph, his chest tightening with guilt. "I should have seen it. I should have protected you. I should have known." But the girls, without realizing, gave him the strength to move forward. Friday nights became sacred. Movie night, with popcorn spilling over bowls and Disney songs echoing through the living room. Saturday mornings meant pancakes, sticky fingers, and trips to Freedom Park, where the girls raced across the grass while Michael chased them, laughing until his sides ached. Sunday evenings were for family games, messy puzzles on the floor, and laughter so loud it seemed to fill the emptiness Angela had left behind. One evening, as the sun set in orange streaks across Charlotte, Chloe climbed onto Michael's lap, resting her head on his chest. "Daddy," she said softly, "Mommy Angela would be proud of us, right?" Michael's throat tightened, but he managed to smile. "Oh, baby girl, she would be so proud. She's watching over us every day." That night, for the first time in years, Michael slept without waking from nightmares. Months turned into years, and the Johnson house grew stronger. The girls entered school, made friends, and filled their home with drawings, songs, and the boundless energy of childhood. But Michael wasn't content just to protect his own. He thought of Angela's legacy, the way she had loved children, the way she had dreamed of giving hope to those who had none. And so he started something new. With the savings from his construction business and support from his church, Michael opened Angela's Haven, a community center for children who had lost parents or endured abuse. The doors were open every afternoon, offering hot meals, tutoring, and the one thing every child needed most, safety. On the opening day, Michael stood in front of the small crowd, his daughters at his side, clutching his hands. He looked at the sign above the door, Angela's Haven, painted in bright letters by neighborhood kids, and felt tears prick his eyes. "This place," he said to the crowd, his voice steady but full of emotion, "isn't just about my family's story. It's about every child who deserves love, protection, and a safe home. Evil tried to break us, but love won, and love will keep winning." The applause that followed wasn't just polite, it was raw, heartfelt, a community embracing the triumph of a family who had walked through fire and come out stronger. And for Michael,
It was the proof he needed. Angela's light hadn't been extinguished. It was still here, burning in every laugh, every hug, every life they touched.
Years passed, and the triplets blossomed into young women who carried the scars of their childhood but wore them as badges of resilience. Each one chose a path shaped in some way by what they had endured. Emily, once the boldest and most outspoken of the three, grew into a fierce advocate for children's rights. She studied law, determined to protect other kids who couldn't speak for themselves. Hannah, the gentle one, became a teacher, pouring patience and love into classrooms full of children who needed someone to believe in them. And Chloe, the quiet soul who had whispered the truth about Vanessa years ago, chose nursing, her way of healing others, making sure no patient ever faced betrayal from someone they trusted. Michael watched them with awe, pride swelling in his chest. He had feared once that trauma would break them. Instead, it forged them into women of strength and compassion. Angela's Haven thrived as well. What began as a modest community center grew into a cornerstone of the neighborhood. Dozens of children passed through its doors each week, finding food, safety, and mentorship. Michael poured his heart into the work, but it wasn't just his effort. His daughters volunteered, neighbors joined in, and even strangers who had heard the story of his family came to help. Sometimes during quiet evenings at the center, Michael would catch glimpses of Angela's spirit. In the laughter of a child safe from harm, in the smile of a volunteer who gave selflessly, in the soft sunset light spilling through the windows, he felt her there, and he knew this was her legacy. But the shadows never disappeared completely. There were still nights when Chloe would wake from a dream, trembling, whispering about seeing Vanessa's face. Sometimes Michael himself would jolt awake, heart pounding, replaying the stormy night when he found his daughter shivering outside. Healing, he learned, wasn't a finish line. It was a road you kept walking, one step at a time. One Sunday afternoon, years after Vanessa's sentencing, Michael sat with his daughters on the porch of their Charlotte home. The cicadas hummed in the summer air, and the girls, now young adults, laughed as they teased each other about childhood memories. For a moment, everything felt whole. Then Chloe turned to her father, her eyes thoughtful. "Daddy, do you ever regret trusting Vanessa? Do you ever regret everything that happened?" Michael took a deep breath, gazing out at the yard where Angela had once dreamed of planting a garden. Regret? No, not anymore, because if I lived only in regret, I'd stay trapped in the past. But I learned, Chloe, we all did. We learned that love can survive even the worst betrayal, that family can grow stronger even when tested by evil. He looked at each of his daughters, his voice soft but certain. Evil people exist in this world. They hide behind kindness, they wear masks, and sometimes we let them too close. But love, the kind your mother gave me, the kind we share, love is stronger. It always wins. The girls leaned against him, 3 hearts beating steady beside his own. For the first time in a long time, Michael felt no weight on his chest, just peace. And in that peace, he realized something powerful. Vanessa had written herself into their story with cruelty, but she would never have the final word. The ending belonged to Angela, to his daughters, to love itself. Because in their family, love wasn't just a feeling. It was survival. It was triumph. It was forever.
Time has a way of softening even the sharpest wounds, though it never erases them. For Michael and his daughters, the years that followed weren't perfect. No life touched by loss ever is, but they were rich with moments that mattered. There were birthdays filled with laughter and frosting smeared across faces. There were quiet evenings on the porch, fireflies flickering while they shared stories about Angela, keeping her memory alive with love instead of tears. There were holidays, crowded with family and friends, Angela's Haven children joining the table as though they had always belonged. Michael found peace not in forgetting the past, but in transforming it. Every child who walked through the doors of Angela's Haven was another victory, another life saved, another reminder that evil does not get to dictate the ending.
His daughters carried that same lesson into their own lives, weaving strength and compassion into every choice they made. And in the quietest moments, when the house was calm and his grandchildren's toys were scattered across the living room floor, Michael would sit back and smile. He thought of Angela, of her laughter, of her dreams. He thought of the promise he made on that dark night to protect their girls, no matter what. He had kept it. The girls were safe, they were loved, they were thriving, and Angela's light shone on, brighter than ever, in the lives of everyone they touched. Some nights, as he turned out the lights and the house settled into silence, Michael would whisper toward the sky, "We made it, love. We kept going. And your legacy? It's everywhere." And in his heart, he believed Angela knew, because in their story, no matter the storms, no matter the betrayals, love was the final word, always.